Yo, what up guys? It's Flark, and welcome to my definitive guide to Unholy PvP for Dragonflight Season 1. It's been a while since I've made one of these. There's been a lot of speculation, nothing really set in stone, and then Shadowlands was a mess. I don't know, just borrowed powers, ridiculous, 4 covenants. So it's been a bit since I've had something so set in stone, so useful that I think it'll be valuable to you for the entire rest of the season, for months on end. I won't have to be constantly adding addendums. I really think that this can be your definitive guide. I've put a lot of work into it. I've put a lot of theorycraft. I've put a lot of testing. This is valuable for rated solo shuffle, rated 3s, rated 2s, rated battlegrounds. There's going to be a little something for everyone. There's a lot to push right now. You can push Glad. You could push Crimson Legend or just Legend. These are really cool, achievable titles. There's something that you can get. As MMR inflates, rated solo shuffle 2400 is going to be very achievable for a lot of players. I'm talking to you. I literally believe you on the other side, person who actually works for a living, who works your butt off, doesn't have a lot of time to play this game. You too could 100% get 2400 in solo shuffle. Give it some games, take these builds into it, take some time, take some practice, and try it. You might be surprised just how much rating you're going to get. So yeah, this is going to go over gear, tier sets, stat weights, your talent builds, all of the different builds that I've come up with and where they are the best and what's the best overall. Some comps, some rotational stuff, some strategies, just definitive. So everything that you might ask me for Unholy, specifically related to Dragonflight. Of course, this is Dragonflight Season 1. And I'm going to get right into it. Thank you guys for watching all my stuff. Thank you for being here with me for all this time. I know that I am sub-perfect and have been for a long time, but I think I've done better recently, and I'll keep trying to do better in the future. So thank you. So with gear, I think I can lock you in piece by piece, like eliminate any question marks or choices at the end, which I know is going to really benefit a lot of people. You're going to have set in stone what pieces you should run, where you should acquire them, how you should set your character up to do the most damage and win the most games possible. And we're going to start right off the bat with the Infurious setup. So this is the Infurious boots and helmet that you can see they have that Infurious tag up there. That's the crafted PvP gear. You get it from the crafting table. If you don't know what that is, please look it up on Wowhead. It's just profession stuff, but anybody can get this. The boots give you CC reduction that can't be found anywhere else. So this is a totally unique effect and you would definitely want it. And then the helm gives you damage when you take damage, but it doesn't mean you have to be getting completely trained, like swaps in solo shuffle or even cleave damage does proc this. And any form of damage, additional damage at all, I think is extremely valuable for Unholy, which just does so much raw damage that it can take advantage of this. Certain specs that were like totally all-in bursty and then do nothing for a while, if this procs when they're doing nothing, it doesn't add anything. But Unholy is always doing something. So trying to milk out as much raw output is going to be a theme of this video. And yeah, the Helm of Vengeance does just that, which means that you're going to run your tier set on legs, gloves, chest, and shoulders because you have this Infurious helm. And yes, as you can see, it does scale up to maximum PvP item level, so you don't have to worry about that at all. The tier set is non-negotiable. If anybody tells you that you don't have enough verse on the tier set, so you're not going to run it, please do not listen to them. They're leading you astray. That is not it. Tier set is absolutely fantastic because anytime you add an effect on top of the already allotted stat distribution for that piece, it is going to be an eye-opener. And this tier set matters. Makes your pet do more damage, and your pet does plenty of damage, but then it makes you do more damage to a big degree. That's a 15% proc chance during Vial Infusion, which you can see is literally all the time. It's anytime you burst a Festering Wound, which is all the time. But that's 8% damage and haste. That's just raw damage. I mean, that's an entire morbidity worth of damage. And then it also gives haste, which is just a great stat. And we'll talk about stats at the very end. But talking about the tier set, I can actually, I think, explain this in a way, because you're going to say, okay, but you lose verse, man. Like, you're going to lose so much. Certain pieces just don't have it at all. Maybe you should just get the 2 set. No. You have a lot of verse. You have verse on every single piece of PvP gear and 2 out of the 4 tier set pieces, which means it is the stat you have the most of by far, which means you can drop a little bit of it. Going down even 6% verse, that's 3% damage reduction. That's not turning you from an immortal god into a glass cannon. It's 3% damage reduction. But what you're getting is not just losing that and getting nothing. You're getting output stats. With the amount of verse that you have, haste and mastery both make you do way more damage now than verse does, which means you're gaining output from your secondary stats on these tier pieces of gear and the 4 set. So you're getting damage on top of damage, and you're sacrificing about 3% damage reduction for that. The amount of output you'll be doing far outweighs the survivability. In fact, you could probably make the claim that haste is a survivability stat because faster globals, more wound bursts, more necrotic wound healing, more death strikes, and also the best defense sometimes is a good offense. When you're doing that much damage, 3% damage reduction is going to be completely negligible because they're going to be on the back foot the entire time, and people who run from you don't get to set up good goes. So 4 set, non-negotiable, shoulders, chest, gloves, legs. Look at some of these pieces. So you can see what I'm saying. Look how much haste is on that piece. And the other stat is mastery, another fantastic stat. When you grab these legs, you're going to be loving it. Okay, so you're going to drop that 346 verse or a little bit more in PvP, right? And you're going to get so many secondary stats. And then you're eventually going to get that full set. And your output is going to go through the roof. You won't regret it at all. Okay. So that's the 4 set conversation. Okay, but you're still like, okay, fine, I get it, great. That's the stuff that has guaranteed stats on it. Your boots, your full tier set, and your helmet. Those are the stats, but there's still times where I get to choose my stats. Absolutely there is. And the stats that you will be choosing are not between verse and mastery and haste and crit. They're not really between anything at all, because crit is just bad enough that you'll never choose it, and verse is already on the piece, so you don't choose it, which means you're choosing between haste and mastery. And I think it's pretty simple. Just get mastery on every single choice piece, because insignia, by definition, has to come with haste. It is always going to have haste. That is how they programmed it, which means you're going to get 518, and it actually scales up a little higher than that, haste from wearing this thing, which is the trinket of choice, because it procs all the time, and you're a sustained damage. You always output damage on Unholy. You're always doing insane damage. So you grab the insignia to synergize with the fact that you have so many goes rather than just having one every minute, and it doesn't even sync with your cooldowns anyway, because your cooldowns are 45 seconds long in cooldown time. So you got the haste here, and then you're going to get mastery in every, choice piece, which means you're going to have mastery and haste rings. You're going to have a mastery necklace, and this is when you're all done. Remember, I'm hovering over things, and you're like, wait a minute, you're going to hover over that weapon. It's going to have crit on it. Right, because I got this to have a 2-handed weapon since I bought a one-hander to try out dual wield. You know, I play lots of specs. So instead, listen to the words that I'm saying, and don't look at the screen and be like, oh, he probably meant to say critical strike after just saying it was the worst stat. I'll correct him in the comments now. Verse mastery on your weapon. Once you've got everything, you get to choose. Once I have more conquests and I've bought every conquest piece and I have my full tier set, I'll be able to switch this to verse mastery. And my verse mastery ring I already have. And then this will be a verse mastery conquest necklace. I didn't choose to have a lower item level necklace, right? I don't have it yet. And then eventually you'll get a verse mastery cloak. I got this from the vault. It was a very bad vault for me that day. It wasn't ideal, but eventually I'll be able to switch it. So, what have we learned so far? This is good stuff. You're getting an insignia trinket. Let's go actually through the trinkets, insignia and medallion. Rings, mastery, haste. Eventually I'll get a conquest ring that has haste on it. So mastery, haste, insignia. Infurious war boots, tier legs. This I think is haste and crit, so you would choose haste. Tier gloves, verse mastery weapon, verse mastery bracers. Tier chest, verse mastery cloak. Tier shoulders, verse mastery necklace with 3 sockets, and all of them you can put main stat mastery in them. I play a little bit of frost, so I lean a little bit toward haste for the faster ice cap goes, but put mastery gems in them. Okay, then the Infurious Helm of Vengeance. All right, now we talk about enchants. Mastery ring, Plains Runners. This is the Movement speed, that's great because you're kind of slow. Fierce armor kit, level 3, that's stamina and strength. Gloves has nothing. Weapon is Rune of the Fallen Crusader. Bracers, I used Leech and Cloak on my bracers because Unholy does 80k DPS and I actually get a lot of healing from it. One of the cool things about having so much damage, especially damage dealt to pets, means you can heal like Demon Hunters do off of pets with Leech, and it does do about 10% of my healing through a solo shuffle, which is not actually from 2 enchants, not crazy. To recommend putting in Leech and getting some heals. Like, that's not a crazy notion. Okay, so chest, that's sustained strength, rank 3. Once I have the conquest tier piece, I'll be putting that on there. That's strength and stamina. Necklace, again, I talked three sockets. You get the mastery main stat, that's totally fine. And there you go. That's enchants. That's every single piece. Remember, please go back in this section, go back, use the timestamps, listen to the words that I say. Again, my gear is not perfect, but I would have to wait another 2 months before it is perfect. And I don't think you guys want to wait 2 months because you're like, wait, I could be pushing rating now. Just tell me. So that's what I'm doing. I'm telling you what I'm going to get. That was, if you go back to the beginning of that section and watch piece by piece, that was every single BIS piece that I will be getting. Most of it I already have. Some of it's coming up soon once I get more conquest and more tier pieces. And if you don't have any tier pieces yet, you have to wait till late January for the catalyst converter or whatever the heck that thing is called. What is that, a carb piece? the converter to get you your tier pieces from conquest pieces. So how you do that, you buy a conquest legs and then you convert it once a week to tier pieces, and then you too can have a tier set. Everybody can get it, and no, you do not have to raid. So don't worry about that. So that's everything. That's gear, enchants, stats, tier set, helm, weapon enchant, boots, trinkets, that's everything. And that's how you're going to gear your character. When you're done with it, like right now, already I kind of have this split where you can see, look at this. What is that? Near identical. Mastery, haste, nearly identical. Crit, not as much. Verse, more than that. You're going to have that spread. Again, I could get more crit and less mastery by replacing this weapon. So that's the sort of thing you're... more mastery and less crit. More mastery and less crit. I have more crit and less mastery, but I want more mastery and less crit. So I will be replacing this, and this number will go up, and that's amazing. And that's the kind of split you're going to have for your stats once everything is said and done, in probably a couple months, right? It's still going to take a couple months for us to get maximum perfect gear. And that's what you're looking for. Okay, so now we're talking about talents. What I'm going to do here is be very diligent because it's an extremely important part. We're going to look right now at my loadouts here. You should be able to see this on the screen. We have pets, diseases, hybrid, reaping, and hybrid 2. All of these builds, I think, have some merit in some form of rated PvP, which is incredible. And Unholy diversity is amazing. And it's so fun that we get to have this in this customization. I'm going to go through each loadout and tell you where it's good, why it's good there, and where it has shortcomings elsewhere. And I'm going to show you the main important talents and talk through it. And then I'm going to go on to the next one. Most of the names were made to be self-explanatory. So when we look at the pets build, and we're going to start there. This is the build that has the most value for exactly pet damage and nothing else. Hybrid means it has some other stuff in there too to give you a mixture of damage that's good in rated PvP, but this one is all in pets damage. So how it does that is, of course, gets the pet buffs on the right side, but then also the left side buffs the pets even more because haste increases their attack rate, makes them do more damage. Strength makes them do more damage as well. We're going to learn that certain talents like morbidity, for example, do not affect your pets. This says damage from you per disease they are affected by, which is actually just you. There's no pet damage increase here. So when you go this middle section, while you can still make a decent hybrid build, which we're talking about, and it still does good output, you're not buffing your pets from this talent or super strain as a result, because super strain and morbidity are meant to work hand in hand to give you a buff. But the haste, right? 20% haste and 2% strength stacking, this does buff your pets by quite a bit. So this is all in pets. You have APOC, Magus, that's a pet. Raise A-Bomb, that's a pet. Fast A-Bomb, we talked about the left side, talked about the right side. All will serve, that's a pet. All of these things just buff your pet. Clawing Shadows does a lot of damage nowadays. Sudden Doom and Rotten Touch can make it do even more damage. This does a ton of single target burst. That's what this is great for. Single target burst. It's got short 45-second burst windows that do crank. Death Coil procs make your Clawing Shadows hit very hard, and it was buffed. You're going to have a ton of Mastery, so Mastery makes Clawing Shadows even harder. You're going to have Necrotic Aura, which makes Clawing Shadows hit even harder. That is just a lot of single target burst. So you could probably guess then, where am I going to assume this is going to be best? Duels, which is not rated PvP, but twos, which is. Twos is where I would play this build. I'm not saying it is the only twos build or the only build that works in twos, but if you really like the obscene burst, like if you play this with Disc and get PI and Dark Arc, because haste is so valuable with this setup, because all these modifiers are multiplicative, so you're gonna have insane levels of haste, which makes your Gargoyle go completely off, and you can juice your Gargoyle faster with faster globals, making it do even more damage, and then it attacks faster, and it's hitting those big hits even more frequently. So this is a twos burst build. If you're playing like DK Disc, maybe even like DK Evoker, or you're playing DK Ardruid and you actually just want to CC the healer out the entire time and just nuke their DPS and kill them in the first clone, like the Trinket the clone, and then die in an in-cap roar from your Ardruid, that's all super feasible. This scales up worse in threes and is completely meaningless in RBGs. Don't run the pet build in RBGs. There are so many builds that we would be running. So this is really a focus on twos and even like duels and outside the open world if you want to. But twos, I would recommend this build. There are other twos build, but if burst is what you like the most, this is probably the build that does that the best. Okay. Now we're looking at diseases. This is the all-in diseases section. This is not quite my solo shuffle build, and you'll notice that in a second. We drop important things like Sudden Doom because you are effectively never running out of runic power. And when you have Frost Fever taking on everybody in an RBG or something, and this is a very RBG-centric build, so spoiler there, you're never running out of runic power. You have way too many globals to press. You cannot spend all your resources, and you're just always doing the most damage possible. So it takes out like these single target talents and Sudden Doom and even Gargoyle to make the most damage modifiers that you can possibly have. And thus I would say this is my BG build. A few modifications on this actually makes my solo shuffle build, but this is my battleground build. As you can see, I don't have Army of the Damned, so I don't have short APOC because it's not that important in BGs. In BGs, if you can do 90k DPS sustained and you have a Rock Cleave with Aflocks and Boomkins actually crank in RBGs, even though they're unheard of in 2s and 3s right now. DHs that do insane output, the enemy team healers are just gonna fall out of mana, fall out of cooldowns, fall apart. They're just all gonna die. So I made a build that was, hey, I can sacrifice anything that's kind of quality of life for arenas and make the highest output build of all time. And that's what this is. You have all the disease talents, you have modifiers. You're like, okay, but that's a pet modifier and it's also a U modifier. That's 10% damage from you. That's going to, every time you press Dark Transformation, you are just applying a modifier to all of your diseases, to Unholy Blight, to Virulent Plague, to your Super Strain dots. Morbidity is a no-brainer for that. That's just raw damage increase. And then the Festermite line, as you're bursting wounds, is just going to amplify your damage even further. This is just a no-brainer. It's only good for BGs because it's very similar to my next build that I will be showing you soon called the Hybrid build that is very similar to this, but switches 2 talents around for an arena setting. And you're going to see why this build makes no sense in arena because you only have to switch those 2. But those talents you probably already can see are going to be Gargoyle and Fast APOC. And Fast APOC is great for applying your Mortal Strike, which again, you can get that with like D&D Scourge Strike in RBGs. You don't need it on one person as much. And then Gargoyle kind of gets lined and cleaved and it's a 3-minute cooldown. Having the 10% modifier in BGs is just super fun. But spoiler, here is my personal solo shuffle build. This is what I run. So you can see Sudden Doom is still gone. I've noticed, and I've played a lot of games. So when you play with this build, just trust me, and then you'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe it. That's true. You don't run out of runic power. When you run Sudden Doom, you just have procs that proc at 100 runic power, and then you spend the proc, and then you're still at 100 runic power, then you spend your runic power, then you get another proc, and you're just spending, and the whole time it helps you conserve for Death Strike, but with Gargoyle giving you a big boost of runic power, which it does do when you press it, and the incredible runic power generation that your spec has, especially from Frost Fever with multiple targets, you're not running out of runic power, which means you don't need Sudden Doom, which actually allows you to get the double morbidity modifier. This is where I think my build differs. So you can see I have the Death Coil talents. I have the Festermite row. I have the Diseases row, but then I have Short APOC, Short A-Bomb for more wounds, for more Festermite, then more APOCs for more instant burst on Festermite, but also Necrotic Wounds application from our PvP talent that gives us Mortal Strike, and it also heals us, and it keeps us going and runs them out of cooldowns, because it's very difficult to heal through our unlimited damage while having a Mortal Strike debuff that can stack with other Mortal Strike debuffs. You've got the single target from Magus. You've got the single target from APOC. You've got the disease setup, which is Even Fever, and Unholy Blight for morbidity, and Plaguebringer for your Super Strain dots, of course, and then of course your Even Fever synergy with Plaguebringer. Just absolutely remarkable. Then you've got your Gargoyle back, so you'll be feeding all of those Death Coils into obscene damage, but also making your Gargoyle do more damage. Coil of Dev is just an extra dot that it's additive, so every time you press Death Coil, it adds extra dot onto it rather than replacing it entirely. You don't even have to worry. You can spam the heck out of Death Coil, and this is going to do a nice little additional chip damage, and it does cleave. So when you use the Death Coil cleave, that's pretty valuable too. And this is just the most raw output. It is single target. From APOC and Magus and Festermite and Unholy Assault. It is AoE. It is Rot from Super Strain. It is hard to peel. It is Burst from Gargoyle. You have the best of all of the Unholy toolkits. You can run somebody over with a Gargoyle. You can Rot them to death with Super Strain. You can single target them to death with 45-second goes, which are modified by morbidity even further when you press Unholy Blight, which is on a 45-second cooldown, just like Short APOC. And you can see what's going on here. When I play this build, you are top damage, but the top damage is so high that it becomes meaningful. This is not mindless pad. You take this into a rated solo shuffle. Dampening starts up immediately. You got a Demon Hunter, an S-Priest, or a Demo Lock on your team. You can stack your Mortal Strikes. You can stun silence the healer. You can put all that pressure in, and eventually dampening gets too high, and they run out of buttons, and it's no longer healable. You win that round. All you have to do is kill one person, and you go on to the next. This is my solo shuffle build. Now, finally, we have the Reaping setup. This build, unfortunately, is not there yet. So I'm going to give you this build as something that you could play with if you just are here to have fun in this game, because I assure you this is a fun build, but it needs more. I think what it needs is more secondary stats. I think late in the expansion, when we have so much haste and mastery, this build scales insanely well with haste, because you're going to be stuck running out of globals. If you could press all the things you want to press in this build when you want to press them during your Reaping window, you could just decimate somebody off the face of the planet, but you just don't have enough overall stats, especially not enough overall haste, to just constantly get those fast globals, boom, 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 to make this worth it. So I'm going to show you the build, talk about it briefly. I'm going to tell you right now that it's just not ready yet. It's not ripe enough yet. It needs more support from any buffs that it gets over the season. If Clawing gets another buff or something, maybe Reaping gets another buff. And if not, I think just the addition of secondary stats and higher health pools, because higher health pools make this Reaping trigger even sooner. Because the idea is that if health pools relative to damage have a different ratio, and that people can stay at that 35% health range for longer, which has happened in the history of this game. It's called dampening metas. You probably aren't familiar with them because it's been 4 years, but when dampening metas exist, this build destroys them. It destroys them. So take a look at this. You got Reaping. You've got the Rotten Touch effect, which makes your Clawing do more damage, and Reaping makes Clawing do more damage, and Reaping makes Death Coil do more damage, and you've got all the Death Coil modifiers. Then you've got Soul Reaper, which does a ton of damage below 35%, which means it's going to apply Reaping as well. Anytime Soul Reaper effect goes off, it also automatically, by definition, gets the Reaping buff. This is crazy single target pressure, and if you had enough fast enough globals, you could really do well with this. You can see it has the Festermite package, because they always do. You want to burst harder. It's got Unholy Blight and Morbidity to get those extra modifiers for Clawing Shadows that you can get during Rotten Touch. Then it's got the Ghoulish Frenzy for those 45-second goes. Again, you can Dark Transform, which is 45 seconds, and Holy Blight, which is 45 seconds, and you get the Morbidity buff. You get a Death Coil proc, and you can hit big Clawings pretty much all the time. Then I have APOC but you can't get short APOC or A-bomb to get all these modifiers. This is a very unique build, but where it looks ridiculous now, come maybe, I don't know, what is it, 10.2? 10.2.5, you might be like, man, I'm glad I took a look at this build, because wow, that's really good now. I can't wait to play that, right? So this is just, and you got the Gargoyle to get him low, you've got the Super Strain Rot to get him low, the Unholy Blight Rot, the 45-second goes to get them low. Then you're going to put modifiers from Morbidity and Ghoulish Frenzy and Rotten Touch all into your clawing. You're going to hit a big clawing. Maybe that gets him to 27% health. Boom, right as the Soul Reaper goes off. If you can apply it before 35, like at around 50, and then chunk them, and then it goes off, you can hit 100k Soul Reapers. So you could do something, and this is true, where you have your Blight rotting them, your Festermite stack stacking, your Dark Transform Pet rotting them, that's buffed from your tier set, your Gargoyle bursting them, then you get a Death Coil proc that hits them hard, into a Clawing Shadow that hits them to 27%, and to a Soul Reaper that crits them for 100k, and they die. That is a very real situation, and if I had enough haste, and we were late enough in the expansion, I would be telling you this build is BIS right now, but it's still cooking, okay? So the Reaping build, and all of these are going to be in the description, of course, they'll all be in the description. But the Reaping build, still cooking. If you want to play it for fun, nobody's going to expect what you do to them. 40k Death Coil, 40k Clawing, 100k Soul Reaper, while you have Blight ticking, pet damage from Dark Transform Auto, and a Gargoyle hitting them, and a Coil of Devastation dot, and all of your diseases. All of that's going to hit at the same time, and they're going to go bang, 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 dead. I'll play this in some solo shuffles on stream. You guys can take a look. It's very fun. And finally, the final hybrid build. This one I figured I'd give the shout out to, though I don't like it. So here's the final hybrid build. Instead of going down one of the paths, middle or right, and the left side to juice it up, it goes down both the middle and the right. So you get those talents, but they don't interact with each other. Super Strain, you can't get Morbidity, which generally is a really good modifier that interacts with other forms of damage, because Morbidity doesn't really have any value for pets, right? So the Morbidity is only your damage, and this is the pet section, so that's kind of counter synergy. And the pet section doesn't really give you any benefit on the disease side, right? So there's not a lot of synergies in how these amplify each other. There's not a lot of modifiers, but they're both so good that you just kind of do a lot of damage anyway. It's a little clunky, but the output is absolutely there, because you can get Ghoulish Frenzy, 10% damage to you, which is your diseases, and your pets. So there's some synergy right there, right? 10% damage to you, diseases, 10% damage to your pets, right? So you got the pet side, fast APOC for your pets, Raise A-Bomb for your pets, Magus pets, APOC pets. Then you got the disease side. That's what makes it a hybrid. You've got Plague Bringer, that's a hybrid. A Holy Blight, that's diseases. Even Fever, that's diseases. Super Strain, that's diseases. And then Ghoulish Frenzy is the ultimate hybrid talent. This is the only thing that I will try this build more. This is the only reason they kind of bring it all together, because Ghoulish Frenzy is perfect for hybrid. It literally says you and your pet. So that's both for you and your pet, like I've said now 6 times, but I just wanted to iron that in. That is the value of this build. You got some 45-second goes, and those 45-second goes amp up your Army of the Dead, which is also a 45-second cooldown, and your Gargoyle, which is a 3-minute cooldown, but you still got those 45-second goes from APOC, Unholy Blight, Dark Transform. So it is a hybrid build. It's not perfectly synergistic, but you have so many sources of damage, it is there. The only reason I like the Unholy Assault side better is because this really hyper juices your Gargoyle, and your Gargoyle is a 3-minute cooldown. So you're waiting a long time. Like, you kind of want to win. Like, you got that 3-minute go in the beginning, and then you kind of want that Unholy Assault go to come back up, so you can start trying to win a 1.5 minutes in. That's our dampening is already sticking out. So that's why I don't personally like this build, but I had to include it. And if I had to include it, that means you know it has to be good, because I have no desire talking about bad builds. If there's a bad build, I'm like, yep, that build sucks, so we're not going to talk about it. This build is good because the output is there. Maybe the synergies are a little lower, but it doesn't matter because each of these talents is so good. It doesn't matter if they don't synergize as well, though, again, they do with Ghoulish Frenzy. Commander makes you do so much more damage. Unholy Aura makes your pets do so much more damage. Your diseases and all the disease components are insane. You saw my Solo Shuffle hybrid build uses that disease package because it's insane. So this is kind of like the hybrid build that's just like, why don't I just pick all the best talents? Okay, so they don't synergize with each other perfectly. They're the best talents, so I might as well pick them. And if that sounds very interesting to you and you really love hyper juicing your gargoyle and maybe working on that 3-minute timer, as well as some juiced up 45-second goes, then this is the build for you. Every single one of these will be linked in the description below. And let me tell you one more time where I think everything is best. Pets. 1 or 2 targets, rated 2v2 burst situations. Diseases, raw diseases. RBGs, BGs. Hybrid, my personal rated Solo Shuffle build. Reaping, just cooking right now, still pretty decent. Hybrid 2, the other rated Solo Shuffle build. And yes, of course, rated Solo Shuffle means 3s as well. Rated Solo Shuffle is a 3v3 environment. Hybrid and Hybrid 2 are my rated Solo Shuffle builds, so they are also my 3s builds. So, 2s, BGs, 3s, cooking, 3s. That is locked in. That is information. You can use that. That is valuable to you, I hope. I really hope. Okay, PvP talents. You noticed I didn't even really need to talk about these much during each specific build. I can save it for the end and talk about it all at once. Why? Because Unholy has some really good PvP talents that are just non-negotiable. Necrotic Wounds is completely inexchangeable. Until they change PvP talents, this will be always picked in all PvP situations, even in duels. A lot of self-healings in the game. If you duel Fury Warrior, you're going to heal for a lot from this and stop him from healing for a lot. Necrotic Wounds is an auto pick in every situation. Raise A-Bomb. Every time you pick Army of the Dead, this talent does nothing until you pick Raise A-Bomb. And there's a couple pets modifiers, and he applies all your diseases, and he gets stealthies out, and he does some decent damage, and he applies a ton of wounds, which can be bursted for Festermite. He's just... I loved him all Shadowlands. I used him all Shadowlands, and now everybody's using him. Raise A-Bomb is an auto pick. So that means you have one last slot. And here's how I do this. Is the enemy team all wizards? Spell Warden. Is the enemy team not all wizards, but your partner is a wizard? Necrotic Aura. Are neither of those things true? So like your partner's a warrior and the enemy team is warrior and lock. You could run Spell Warden, but you could also run Strang. Stun Silence is a massive go, and you can get a ton of pressure on a healer or on a DPS while CCing the healer. And there you go. One more time. Is the enemy team all wizards? Use Spell Warden. Is the enemy team not wizards, but your teammate is? Use Necrotic Aura. Are there no wizards on your team and the enemy team is like a hybrid or just totally melee DPS? Use Strang. Locked in, Raise A-Bomb. Locked in, Necrotic Wounds. Aura, Spell Warden, Strang, situational. All right, now real quick, we're going to take a look at the left side of the talents here. There is a lot of stuff you switch in PvP, and I'll just run through that right now, and I'll talk about the stuff you don't switch as well. So Unholy, I always run with this. Raise Dead, Enfeeble, Brittle, Strength, Unholy Endurance. I think there's just too much value from each talent in this row to ever swap off of it. 15% damage reduction is great. Lichborn Duration is great because it's more immunity, more leech, and more damage reduction. And yes, if you didn't know that, Lichborn gives you leech. So pressing Lichborn as a defensive gives you a ton of healing and actually a damage reduction for a long time with immunity to CC. So Unholy Endurance is an auto pick for me. Strength is obviously an auto pick. This is 6% more damage. That's like Kevin's Oozling. That's an auto pick. And then reducing the damage they deal to you. I mean, Enfeeble is just absolutely fantastic. So that entire row is set in, and then you need to go down some form of the left row. Of course you auto want Blind. Of course you want auto IBF. Crit is not your best stat, but it's fine to just have. Asphyxiate is automatic. Wraithwalk is automatic. And then you need to go down through Will of Necropolis. Okay, it's nerfed, but you still need it because you want Rune Mastery, which is Strength. A-Bomb Limb, which is a major offensive cooldown. On Holy Bond you can go, but this is going to be one of the things that I switch out. And then you need to go down these rows. Runic 10, that's more runic power. I said your runic power gen is amazing, and it is. Insidious Chill, that's just a pick to get to Icy Talons, more damage, and then Empower Rune Weapon. Unholy feels so good with haste, and having this as an addition to help set up all of our globals by making us have a ton of haste and rune generation during those globals to make our burst nearly limitless. It's just impossible to stop us because we have so much resource gen, so much haste, so much power. This is absolutely defined. So what can you even swap around? Of course, you've got zone, fast AMS, fast IBF. These are the things you can swap around. I've actually locked in double chains. The reason I've locked in double chains is because I found that the range is so much higher than I thought it would be that you can change like a melee and a healer or a melee and a ranged, even if they're not right on top of each other. And chaining ranged is good because it helps them from getting away from you, but it also stops them from getting in position to CC your healer or to get burst on something that they're running after. So if they're moving slow, it's just bad for casters. So I've locked in double chains, which means you can swap around. You see a physical comp only, you take out AMS, short AMS, you run into acclamation, that's short IBF. You can take out both stacks of Unholy Bond, and you can get short IBF and AMZ. I run AMZ a lot less than I should in solo shuffle because the amount of times somebody has trinket and run out of it is really bad. And if I use it on stuns, like I said, they could trinket run out of it, but also sometimes they come out of the stun and they want to play their character, and it's kind of bad because solo shuffle is about snowballing pressure. And if they're stuck, like if I put it on a melee and they're stuck in a zone, then all of a sudden they can just set up a little go and then wait for the zone to drop and pop them while they're kind of stranded in no man's land. Of course, it's good. Of course, it is good, but I've personally been very frustrated with the amount of times people move out of it. And then it's just a global and a dead talent. That said, into wizards in solo shuffle, if it's Esprit Stelly and I see a lasso, I put zone on them. So it's not like I never run it, but it's not default for me. If it was like warrior lock or even DH lock, I would say it's not default for me, even though it absolutely could be because it does get value out of both of those specs. And it's just because of those reasons that I described. But you can absolutely drop both on Holy Bond and get, look at this, short IBF, short AMS, and zone, and you're very defensive now. I've never found big zone is all that important. This is the amount absorbed. So the max, right now it's at 628k. So this does not mean it's a 60% wall now. It's still a 50% wall, but this absorption shield is higher. So you never need to really run that ever. But yeah, you can grab, if it's melee, you want short IBF. If it's magic, you probably want short AMS and zone. Or if you want to go all in, and this is something I do a lot because you can win by killing them first, you can drop both of those and go 2 stack of Unholy Bond, but everything else is locked in. I mean, the Lichborn line I feel is locked in. The other thing you can do if you want to play offensive but not with Unholy Bond is you can run D&D haste, but really what's important is double grip, double DA. Now you're very hard to peel. You can disrupt a lot of things. You can yank people in. You can D&D on top of it just for the fast haste, and the AoE Scourge Strike applies AoE Necrotic Wounds, gives you more healing, gives you more output. There's some merit in this as well. And that is everything for your talents. Let's move on. Okay, finally, let me go to my specific hybrid build. Here it is. And let me show you, because my hybrid build uses all the main cooldowns. You can see I have Gargoyle and Unholy Assault. These are the big two that you can add as cooldowns. Let me show you a rotation on a PvP dummy that best utilizes your cooldowns and then your downtime after all your cooldowns are down. Because one of the things about Unholy is it's like setup global, setup global, setup global, setup global, unhealable damage, right? Once you go through all of it, then you can start doing your unhealable damage. But if you don't do that first part well enough, you're kind of going to be slow and clunky and not get it off. And here's how you get it off as quick as possible. So you're mounted up. Here's the middle of the arena. There's the enemy team on their pillar. The first thing you want to do, drop Raise Abomination on their side of the map. You don't have to run all the way into them and then put it on them. You can demount, drop it on them. Why? Because he'll start applying wounds. He'll apply diseases. He'll start attacking. You don't have to be there babysitting him. I know he's pretty dumb, but come on, give him some credit. He will attack them. He will apply all the diseases, even if he's not attacking your main kill target. He can still apply wounds. He can still pull people out of stealth. He can still get you combat against rogues. Just drop them on their side. Then, As you're getting in there, you can drop a Chains of Ice, keep them slowed, and then start rocking through setup globals. As you're walking to them, Blight, Dark Transform, Empower Rune Weapon, Raise A-Bomb, then right when you connect. So that was the getting to them buttons. You see how they don't require a target? Unholy Blight does not require a target. Dark Transform does not require melee range of a target. A-Bomb Limb does not require that. You know what does? Unholy Assault, APOC. So you press those 3. 1, 2, 3, and then 4. 3 plus Raise A-Bomb, which is the first thing you press on their side. It's a clicked one. Then, once you got to them, you already have your 4 setup globals done. You go Unholy Assault, APOC. Now you have every setup global out. Gargoyle is not a setup global. He is off the global. You you press 1 Scourge Strike to burst a wound, because you're going to start building up those Festermite stacks, but also you want the Plaguebringer buff. Then Gargoyle, Death Coil, Scourge Strike, Death Coil, Scourge Strike, Death Coil, Scourge Strike, Death Coil, Scourge Strike. And the biggest thing that you learn is that you don't press Festering in the opener. Where did I say Festering in there? 0 times. 0 times I said Festering Strike in there. Why? Raise A-Bomb applies wounds, Unholy Assault applies wounds, Infected Claws applies wounds. But you don't need to. It wastes 2 runes and a global, when you could be using a global to do more damage, to burst wounds, to get Festermite stacks, or to use Death Coils to build your Gargoyle. Festering Strike is a wasted button in the opener. You only press it after all of your opener is done and you have 0 wounds left. I added a demonstration because I know some people would be asking, so let me show you how that looks real quick here. Just everything that I just said. Raise A-Bomb, Unholy Blight as you're running, Dark Transform, A-Bomb's Limb, Unholy Assault, APOC, Scourge Strike, Death Coil, Gargoyle, Death Coil, Death Coil, Coil, Scourge, Coil, Scourge, Scourge, Coil. Still haven't pressed Festering once. Coil, reapply my dots, Scourge, Storage. I mean, doing 100k single target DPS. This is actually a ton. Even for a dummy, this is a ton. Like, this is probably the most damage I've ever done in my entire life. Scourge, Coil. Still haven't had to press a single Fester. And now, Festering Strike. Right? There you go. So, you saw then, that was how my opener, that was my setup globals, 100k DPS. That's absolutely asinine for single target. That is what's crushing people in PvP. In every situation, that is your burst setup. And then all that you have to do to change that to your single target setup is add Festers when you're at 0 wounds. You saw I did not press my first Festering Strike until 30 seconds in. That is when my wound generation went down. No A-Bomb, slower Infected Claws. My wound generation went way down, so I was able to use a Fester to apply wounds and then Scourge to burst it. So all you do to make that your single target rotation outside of burst is apply Festering Strike when you have 0 wounds, keep spending them, Death Coil, spend them, Death Coil, then you get down to 0, you apply 1, spend Death Coil, and you press these major 45-second cooldowns right as soon as they come up, because guess what? Dark Transform 45, APOC 45, Unholy Assault 1.5 minutes. Well, that's 45 times 2. So every other set of cooldowns, you will have Unholy Assault, and you will always have Dark Transform and APOC. And eventually, 30 seconds, guess what? That's just double 1.5. So then everything will come back up, and then you'll do a Super Gargoyle go. The only thing that doesn't rotate well into that is A-Bomb Limb, but it's just disruptive and just does a bunch of damage. You don't have to pair it with your other cooldowns. You can just press it, because Unholy oozes so much damage that you can just press this to disrupt them and to keep, sometimes you get bait cooldowns out of them even though you're not really doing a go. And that's really good because then your cooldowns come back up and then you're destroying them. It's just pretty much press buttons as they came up. And that is your entire burst and single target rotation. Some other meaningful effects here. We've got your CC, stun into sometimes silence. Asphyxiate on the off target's really good. You have pet stun, maybe war stomp if you're a cow. Probably not, probably just pet stun for the main target. This is actually a pretty decent stun during Dark Transform. If they are low health, you can get them. You can get them on catch them on a global and keep people low. Or you can just have your DH Nova them or your Warrior Stormbolt them, and then you can stun silence the healer. And that's good for you because you can track your own cooldowns, because again, in solo shuffle, especially since a lot of people are playing this now, you don't really have the perfect synergy. You don't have comms. So if you're just letting him stun kill target, you won't overlap, you won't DR, and then you can do your own stun silence on the healer. and then you can track your own cooldowns. Blind is not really a setup tool. Even as Frost, it's not, but as Unholy, it's definitely not. It's just an incredible peel. When multiple targets are together, blind them both, or if it is a dire situation, you can grip blind the melee together, or grip the lock over to a melee and blind them both. You can blind major cooldowns like a Monk's Images or a Demo Lock's Tyrant. And effectively, this just gives you one more answer. You can also, if you blind the DPS and the DPS are stacked and you grip the healer in and blind them, you can stop the DPS's go and then start setting up damage on them. And if you don't break the blind on the healer, then you've stopped a little bit of pressure and turned it into your own pressure. Blind does not remove dots, not yours and not anybody's, and it does not break immediately on damage. It breaks after a couple seconds, a second or a couple frames rather, which means you can use it to interrupt a fists, you can use it to stop pets, and then it would take a few dot ticks on those pets for it to break. As well as on the healer, it might not break for a bit. So you can get CC, you can peel, you can blind a healer in no man's land. If you're about to win, you could stun, silence, blind. There are so many ways to use those tools. And you don't only stun the healer. That was a ideal situation. But again, of course, if you blind somebody, get their trinket, you can stun the Windwalker Monk on his trinket to completely stop his go and also start getting counter pressure because Windwalker Monks and stuns die. You have other tools that I've already gone over in the beginner's guide to DK PvP, like Death's Advance, Lichborn, AMS, IBF. They are exactly the same as they always were. So I really want you to, take a look at that. And because, again, that would make this video another 2 hours to explain all that. So I'll probably link to it in the description. As for comps that you want to play, yeah, I would say I can pretty much lock in what comps you're gonna play right now from what I've seen on ladder. Unholy DKDH is just completely nuts. It is completely nuts. It does so much damage, double MS, unpeelable, beautiful CC, AoE stun silence on the healer, into imprison, into his fear. It's too good. It's too good. It's actually really easy to play, like really easy. So if you're looking to push rating DHDK, you're going to be loving it. But there's still Unholy S-Priest and Unholy Demo and even Unholy Windwalker that are all just worse than Unholy DH. Maybe not Unholy Demo. Unholy Demo is probably getting really close to as good because it has all the same things Unholy Demo used to have. Stun on both DPS, stun on the kill target, into coil, stun on the healer, into fear, into silence, right? You've got the same kind of win condition, and he's got so much damage and a mortal strike. So your single target goes are just through the roof. DH is just so unbelievably good right now that nothing can really beat it. But if anything were to stand up to it, it would be DK Demo. SP unfortunately just gets run over by melee cleaves, but you can set up some naughty goes, especially since you'll have PI. And Windwalker DK is just squishier than DH DK, but a little burstier. So if you really don't want to play with Demon Hunters, and I'm fine with that, I don't blame you too much, then Windwalker DK is a burstier, squishier version of DHDK, which means you could run the pet build that's very burst centric instead of the rot build, which just it just has so much raw synergy because DH never stops doing damage and DK never stops doing damage, and they even have 45-second cooldown windows that both sync up with each other because he has short Chaos Nova now. It is a match made in heaven. Everybody should really be playing DHDK. You have a 45-second grip, Nova, Dark Transform, APOC, Essence Break, Blade Dance, and God forbid what they're not going to die in that. So you're like, oh, okay, I guess I'll just do 50k DPS the rest of the game. Oh, you're doing that? Me too. I'll also do 50k DPS. Oh, and we both have a Mortal Strike that stacks with each other? Sure, let's both do 50k DPS with a stackable Mortal Strike and a 45-second go and an AoE stun and Stun Silence and Prison Fear. It's a good comp. It's a good comp, man. It's your best comp. It's your best comp. And that, my friends, is Unholy DK. It's my definitive guide. I think there was everything. I gear, set in stone. Talents, set in stone. Comp? I mean, did I not convince you on DHDK? I think that's set in stone too. You can get Glad with this. You can get Legend and Rated Solo Shuffle with this. You can push twos with this with a friend, a healer, preferably. You can do the most damage in the history of the game in RBGs in this, like 100k sustained if you feel like it. You can play anything you want with this and it will work. One form of build that I've given you in this video will suit your fancy. And I hope that that helps and means anything to you. It was really nice to get out some concrete information again, and I hope that you have a great season. Good luck, and accomplish everything you've set out to do.